Hello, how's it going? In today's video, I'm covering A Deal with Dragons, Assault on Hellfire Citadel, the Battle of Arkandun, and Gruul the Dragon Killer from Chronicle Volume 2. So let's get... Once back on Draenor, Terran Gorefiend took the artifacts and all of Deathwing's crates of crap to Hellfire Citadel. Nazul was waiting for him there, and the old shaman was ever so slightly nervous. Word had now reached the Horde that the Alliance forces had followed them through the Dark Portal, so they should probably hurry up and get that new dimensional rift opened ASAP. But when Nazul saw Gorefiend also had a load of suspicious cards, he was like, what the bloody hell's all that about? He was even more stunned when some of the orcs accompanying Gorefiend revealed themselves to actually be Deathwing and some other black dragons in disguise. And then he was terrified. Even as a bloke, rather than a dragon, Deathwing radiated ridiculous power. And whilst Nazul was kind of stuttering and possibly soiling himself, Deathwing sensed he had possession of the Skull of Gul'dan, and he was immediately like, I want that skull. Give me that skull. Instinctively, the war chief was like, pfft, whatevs. But then he remembered he was terrified of this creature, and so he handed it over. He had no further need of it anyway. Its only purpose had been to reopen the Dark Portal, and that was done. Deathwing intended to use the skull's lingering energies to strengthen his dragonflight and accelerate the growth of his eggs and babies. That's right, Deathwing can have babies. And also, the Skull of Gul'dan seems to have an awful lot of really convenient purposes, doesn't it? But anyway, Deathwing showed his gratitude to the Horde by leaving behind a few black dragons to help protect their citadel against the upcoming assault. And then he buggered off and settled in Gorgrond. That seemed like the most suitable place to hide his clutch of eggs. Nazul then gave the order to get the portal party started. Originally, they were going to perform the ritual at the site of the Dark Portal, because it rested on a convergence of magical ley lines. But the Alliance had taken control of that area like a bunch of jerks. The next best option, as far as Nazul could tell, would be the Black Temple. So he and the bulk of the Horde began their march on that location, but he left behind Kargath Bladefist and his Shattered Hand clan to hold the Alliance at bay. Meanwhile, Khadgar and Turalyon knew that their highest priority was to stop this Nazul twat. If they could kill him, the Horde's plan would collapse. They figured he was probably still at Hellfire Citadel, so the Sons of Lothar launched an all-out offensive against the stronghold. Chieftain Bladefist and the Shattered Hand had dug in pretty well for this siege. They were pretty convinced they'd be able to hold the Alliance for a week, at least. But they were wrong. It was over by the end of the first day. Even with Black Dragons helping, Kargath's forces just couldn't handle the simultaneous attacks from Griffin Riders in the sky and the soldiers on the ground. And when Khadgar and his Magi got involved, Kargath had no choice but to cheese it and flee into the wastes. Although they were victorious in this battle, the Sons of Lothar were still kinda annoyed to realise that the Horde's war chief wasn't even there. First of all, Black Dragons at Hellfire Citadel was a pretty ill omen, and secondly, Khadgar discovered the Horde were marching south with the artifacts. He couldn't sense the Skull of Gul'dan with them though. For some reason, that was up north. At this point, Khadgar explained that the Alliance could no longer simply focus on Nazul. He was going to need the Skull of Gul'dan in order to destroy the Dark Portal on Draenor's side. So Turalyon was like, great. And he reluctantly decided to split the forces. One half would track down the skull, the other half would apprehend Nazul and the artifacts. Khadgar, Turalyon and Illyria led the forces up north. Danath Trollbane and Kurdran Wildhammer pursued Nazul. When word reached Nazul that Hellfire Citadel had fallen in one day, he was a little bit pissed off. Kargath's not going to live that one down anytime soon. But they still had a considerable head start. Plus they knew the land, and they were moving pretty quickly, so everything should be fine. What he didn't know was, Griffins fly pretty fast too. Kurdran Wildhammer and his Griffin Riders had decided to scout ahead, and had already caught up with the Horde. They'd found them at the edge of the Bone Wastes, and proceeded to start attacking them. They bombarded them from the sky, and to be honest, they were actually winning. Nazul and his forces needed to find a safer route to the Black Temple, or else they were going to die very embarrassing deaths. Lucky for them, there was a safer-ish route. During the Horde's war against the Draenor, Gorefiend had learned much about their tomb city, Arkandun. There were passageways in there that led to Shadowmoon Valley. Only problem is, the place is a bit haunted, innit? It's not much safer than our current predicament. But Nazul didn't see any other choice. As they fled towards the tomb, the Griffin Riders tried a bold new attack. It was so crazy, it just might work. But it didn't. Kurdran got knocked off his mount and ended up getting captured. The other dwarfs didn't have time to react before the Horde disappeared into Arkandun. Inside the tomb, Kilrog Deadeye tortured Kurdran, hoping to learn the Alliance's true numbers. But the little Scottish bugger never broke. Despite unspeakable pain, he held his tongue. Outside, Danath Trollbane's ground forces finally caught up, and the Griffin Riders explained the situation. This was going to be tough. Arkandun had narrow corridors, and the orcs know this place better than we do. If we rush in to rescue Kurdran, we might just end up getting bottlenecked, and that would be well shit. Suddenly, a weird-looking bird bloke appeared. Grizik, the Arakoa outcast. He'd been following the Sons of Lothar for a while, and he had no love for the Horde. Not after Kargath had betrayed them all those years ago and dipped them into the blood pools of Sethek Hollow. So he was like, "You guys want some help?" Guided by the Arakoa, Danath and his ground forces entered the tomb and stormed through it. They easily managed to avoid any Horde ambushes and eventually liberated Kurdran. But once again, Nazul was nowhere to be found. He'd bloody slipped through their fingers. Only Kilrog and his Bleeding Hollow clan were there, because they'd volunteered to stay behind to hold the alliance. But this wasn't Kilrog being a noble hero. Many years ago, he'd performed a ritual that granted him a vision of his own death, and he'd realised that this place was where he was gonna die. You'd think that would be enough reason to not stay behind, but okay. The Bleeding Hollow and the Alliance forces clashed, and Danath Trollbane confronted Kilrog Deadeye. They engaged in a brutal duel, and Danath plunged his blade through the Orc's throat. The rest of the clan saw their leader die and just kinda gave up, but Nazul now had the time he needed to safely reach the Black Temple. Meanwhile, Deathwing was pretty happy that he'd chosen Gorgrond. It's a bit of a ball ache to traverse the region if you can't fly, which made this the perfect refuge. The land was barren, but it was occupied. There were still some Gron left that had survived Draenor's slow decay, and due to the planet slowly dying, they'd kind of put aside their old territorial fighty ways and joined forces under the leadership of a particularly mighty Gron named Gruul. Gruul and his followers had no intention of allowing the Black Dragons to conquer their home, so they fought back, but Deathwing didn't give a shit. They weren't any real threat, just pests. He continued to search the region for good hiding places for his eggs, whilst his followers fought these native twats. But Deathwing's arrogance would be his downfall. Whilst he was distracted, the Sons of Lothar arrived. They were a little bit taken aback by what they saw as they entered the region. The battles between Gron and Black Dragons had been brutal. The Gron had even taken to impaling their fallen enemies on spikes, displayed for all to see. Lovely. Also, the Gron were very nearly going to start murdering the Alliance as well. But luckily, Khadgar and Turalyon demonstrated that they were no friends to the Black Dragons. They struck a simple bargain with Gruul. You give us safe passage, we'll help you defeat Deathwing. So both forces prepared an ambush at the largest cache of Deathwing's eggs. The plan was simple: smash the eggs, Deathwing will probably appear sooner or later. And he did. He and the Black Dragons swooped down to unleash their molten fury. And Gruul, who'd been waiting for this, scaled up a mountain and launched himself at Deathwing, intent on punching that dragon right in the face. Khadgar helped. He lashed Deathwing with his arcane power, ripping apart the metal plates that kept him from exploding. Molten energies burst from his broken form, spilling fire and magma across Gorgrond. And Deathwing was in so much pain that he just so happened to drop the Skull of Gul'dan. That's convenient. He may have even died on Draenor that day, if he hadn't have full-on cheesed it back to Azeroth through the Dark Portal and completely abandoned his plan. But one thing was certain: he'd have his revenge on all those who attacked him, especially Khadgar. That guy can suck a whole bag of dicks. Khadgar and the rest of the Sons of Lothar collected the skull and then made a hasty retreat out of Gorgrond. They figured Gruul would probably turn on them if they stuck around. Gruul himself had earned further respect from his followers. His battle with Deathwing and victory over the Black Dragons caused his followers to start referring to him as the Dragon Killer. And we're leaving it there! A lot of payoff in this video from stuff I covered like 6 months ago. Feels good, man. In the next Volume 2 video, I'm pretty sure we're going to finish the book. Nazul reaches the Black Temple, Draenor breaks, and a couple of other little things, and we're done. As always, thanks very much to those of you who support the channel as patrons. Links in the description if anyone's interested in supporting the channel in that way. Also, there's a link to the Discord server in there as well. If you enjoyed this video, like, subscribe, all of that bollocks, and all that's left to say is, thanks for watching, and see ya!